Happy Friday, friends. It's Katie here from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. The Olympics in Tokyo 2020, 2021 are coming to a close. And I thought, what better way than to chat with Coach Dave Ling about the incredible performance all of the athletes had, considering the difficult few years they've had, or specifically the Canadian Olympic swim team and the performance. There were so many incredible performances, both from Canada, from other countries that perhaps weren't expected. And I'm super excited to be able to chat with someone that really digs deep into what's going on and the context around it. So a little bit of background about myself. I was never a competitive swimmer. My exposure to competitive swimming was lifeguarding, first at the University of Toronto, which was a high performance center for Swim Canada, and then learning from coaches what they're looking for, what they're doing, how they're progressing and working with athletes. Coach Dave Ling, who I'm going to bring on in just a second. He's been coaching for many, many years. We've been friends for a really, really long time. And I really, really appreciate not just the fact that he watches races, performances, what the athletes are doing, but he has a whole continuum of what this means in the context of things that have been going on in terms of sports, in terms of swimming, in terms of culture. And so I know you guys love hearing from him, and I just thought I would invite him on to chat a little bit about the Olympics, because it's been an incredible 10 days of swimming. So I'm going to add Dave and we're going to get started.
Hey, Katie, how you doing?
I am well. How about you?
I am well. Little light on the sleep department, but ready to go.
Well, and that's what I was thinking. It's what was the time difference to watch swimming in Ontario? Because for me, it was pretty good. It was not too late at night, but I think it was worse for you in Toronto.
Yeah, the finals would start at 9:30, and then we'd have prelims that would start at 6 a.m. So it was actually a pretty good balance. But watching till midnight and then getting up to coach at 4:30 in the morning is for 8 days in a row is a bit of a grind.
Well, and I'm sure you're so glad to be back in the pool after all of these pool shutdowns in Ontario, but the timing I'm sure could have been better.
There's no bad time to return to swimming. Like, it's been a tough year. There's no such thing as bad timing. If they're going to let us in the building, we're coming in.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. So Olympic swimming, Tokyo 2020. Let's start with, your first thoughts about how it went down.
Well, I'll be Canadian centric for a second here and say that given all that our Canadian swimmers had to deal with over the last pandemic period, to be able to go and win 6 medals is absolutely incredible. And most of them came out of the camp, the team run by Ben Titley in Toronto, the high performance center there. That guy is a wizard. And I really think it's one of the crowning achievements of Canadian sports is to be able to come back after being locked down much harder than most of the world and still perform on the world stage. So that was great. Really, when I look at the swimming, there weren't a lot of world records set during the games, but the level of swimming and the depth of competition was really awesome. Really, really incredible.
Well, and it's interesting. I want to comment first on what you were saying, context for some Americans if you're watching. So Ontario, where a lot of these swimmers were training, Penny Alexiak, Maggie McNeil, a lot of these big names, Kylie Mass. Ontario was locked down for something like 360 days of the last 18 months. And so we are talking extremely restrictive access to swimming pools. Yes, some exceptions were made for high performance swimmers, but really not at that level of engagement or competition or dual meets or travel or anything like you would see in some of these other countries. So I agree with you, Dave. It was shocking in a really positive way to see these athletes be able to overcome so many extra challenges that, some athletes didn't even have to contend with in countries where they set up dedicated swim zones or athlete zones or even travel meets.
Yeah, and still the world came and they competed. And I would, even though there weren't a lot of the world records, I bet if I, and I'm won't do this tomorrow, but at some point we'll look at what it took to finish 8th at this Olympics to just get into the final. At this Olympics was probably much stronger than at any other time in history, not just with the curve of how swimming progresses, but with how close it was 1 to 8.
Well, and I think for those of us who are, who've watched Michael Phelps over the years, or even just the progression of sport, I remember really starting to watch swimming in 2000 with Ian Thorpe. I mean, at a certain point that we keep shaving off time, right? Like when you talk about human performance without the advantage of equipment, we don't have those fancy rubber suits anymore. How much can you really improve technique, cardiovascular performance, right? It's incredible to shave off some of the seconds we saw shaved off this year.
Well, and I'm watching track and field a lot this week, Katie, and that sport is obviously a little bit more evolved than swimming is, especially in terms of equipment, and a lot simpler in terms of equipment, although there are some complexities with shoes. The number of world records that are typically set at an Olympic track and field meet are much less than the swimming, so there's still some ways to go in swimming. Hopefully, in my lifetime, quite a ways to go, but it will reach a point at some point.
Well, and I'm so glad you brought up track and field, because I've also been following that, where they've got a special vulcanized surface in Tokyo, and the athletes are saying it's one of the best surfaces they've ever run on. And then these spike shoes, some people are for them, some countries are against them, right? It's going to be really interesting to see if there's any fallout from this at all, similar to the rubber bodysuits from the Olympics. If quantifiably, there's been a lot of world records, as you mentioned, in track this week. What is sustainable, and what is the result of the confluence of two amazing pieces of equipment?
Agreed. Yeah. So swimming still going, track having a little bit of a bounce back, some exciting races, but I'm all for world records. So the more technology, the better.
So the first one I want to talk about for sure for me was the Cinderella moment of this Olympics. I texted you right after it happened. So I'm watching swimming. It's like the first or the second day, and Hafnaoui steals, from Tunisia. What is he? I don't even remember the event, but he stole, and it was just like the most incredible Olympic moment to watch. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it was the men's 400 freestyle right on the first night. Ahmed Hafnaoui, who I had never heard of before. He's certainly a very talented young man, actually more of an 800 freestyler than a 400 freestyler. But I guess that's different now. He's a big, tall, 18-year-old boy with huge feet, huge hands. And about halfway through the race, he made a move to get to the front, and he was able to stay there. And that was a packed field. The Australians were going to be tough. The American was going to be tough. And he just took the race. And in the last 15 meters, he really put his head down, ramped up his stroke rate, got his kick going, and he put his hand on the wall first, which was absolutely incredible. And even though there was no fans in the stands, that gave us the beautiful image of his coach up in the stands in the Tunisian area where there was nobody else, running around, waving his arms, screaming. He was the second most excited coach on the week.
Well, we can talk about the other one in just a second, but if anyone hasn't seen this race, it's a really short race. Look it up on YouTube. And certainly as a lay spectator, I'm kind of expecting America to win or Australia to win. I didn't look at and you don't look at the outside lanes. The slower swimmers are typically seated in the outside lanes. And I just was watching my TV going, the outside lane is catching up, and then he's advanced, and listening to the commentating, it was incredible to see his face, because it was obviously something that he was not expecting. I've done a little bit of research since, and he trains in Tunis, and he has a single lane in a community pool with regular swimmers, right? I don't think he's been advantaged the way a lot of competitive, robust programs are. So really an amazing story. Do you think it was a one-off, or do you think there's some longevity and maturity there?
I hope it's not a one-off. He's a very talented young man. He's not swimming a 50. So it's not just a pure speed event. There's a lot of fitness and a lot of tactics and a lot of training that goes into doing what he did. And as I said, he's more of an 800 than a 400 guy. Mm-hmm. So there's certainly lots there. It depends on what kind of choices that he makes over the next couple of years and how he handles what should be some newfound fame, right? He's the second major medalist in swimming from Tunisia. The other one, Usmalouli, who swam in the 10K open water and is a previous 1500 freestyle gold medalist. But Uz spent most of his time swimming in Southern California.
Okay. Yeah, big difference then to have access to college swimming or other facilities as opposed to swimming in a community pool in Tunis.
Yeah, and I'm sure this young man has every scholarship offer he could ever want. I have no idea what he's like as a student, so a lot of it will depend on what he wants to do. But it was certainly the best of what the sport has to offer. As you said, swimming out on the outside, the underdog from the underdog country, coming from the least glamorous situation in the pool, and yet sometimes physicality just matters.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the college experience. I noticed in the course of learning more about the athletes this week. So Maggie McNeil, she swims in Michigan, swims for Michigan. I assume she was there this past year and had the benefit of training with that team. You have any knowledge of what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, she was the women's NCAA Swimmer of the Year. She's a star. She, of all the Canadians, she had the best racing portfolio of the season. Most of it short course yards, though, which is a big difference from long course meters. But she's quite the talent, and she had to pull the win out of lane 7. She was not the top qualifier. She was not in the middle of the pool. Lane 7 was very nice to the Canadians last week. That probably spoke more to the pool because the pool was fast every lane. It didn't matter. As long as you were in it, it was ready to go. She goes to the University of Michigan. She's going back. She actually just put her name in the transfer portal, which is an NCAA administrative thing that I don't need to bore people with, but she might not finish at the University of Michigan. I believe she has one more year left in her degree, and then she will have one more year of eligibility left, which, if she so chooses, she can take her talents to another program.
Interesting. Yeah, I appreciate tidbits like that because the American, as you said, like the eligibility program in the US is so interesting. And it's, you know, Michigan is a powerhouse in a lot of sports. They have great facilities. They have great, great budget for a lot of their athletes. But it will be interesting to watch. She was someone who, once I saw that she was at a US school this past year, I thought immediately that I'm sure she benefited from racing opportunities and really the caliber of training that some of our athletes domestically would not have had access to. Right, so a really good opportunity for her.
Yeah, it was a good ecosystem for them, for sure.
Let's talk about some of the other Canadian swimmers. So anything, particular race or person who stuck out for you?
I mean, everybody, we haven't really mentioned her name much yet, but Penny Oleksiak is an Olympic icon. I believe, were you still at the University of Toronto when she started busting on the scene? Like,
I was going to say, you were there. I was there for a very short period of time. She was very young, but I mean, yeah, we can pull that out.
Yeah, I mean, so it was pretty obvious from a young age that she was an outlier talent, and now she's really just capitalizing on all that she was, all the potential she had. Obviously, she had the gold medal and the silver medal performance from Rio. She's had a tough 5 years. We don't need to get into that too much, but to show the maturity to come back 5 years later and still be one of the best in the world, and in many ways swim faster than she did 5 years previous. She's a star, and she's a very worthy recognition of. She's very worthy of the recognition of Canada's most decorated Olympian that we've had. So she's great. Kylie Moss. I don't know. You probably weren't at the University of Toronto when Kylie showed up. She came from a little program outside of Windsor, inside Windsor, actually, Windsor, Essex. And 2 silver medals. She's awesome. She's smart. She's fast. She's a good person. She's everything you would want. I've got 2 daughters. If they could grow up to be Kylie Moss, I'd feel like I was doing a pretty good job. So 2 silver medals for her. You know, the funny thing is after she won the silver medal in the 100 back, there was almost a air of disappointment, which is something different from Canadians because Kylie was a 2-time defending world champion and a former world record holder. You almost felt that she had earned the right to have higher expectations in silver, but she's done really well.
Well, and I, again, not to belabor the point, but it is so true of our Canadian athletes that it's been such a difficult 18 months on top of the traditional training cycle. And I love what you said about the maturity with Penny Oleksiak, because I know for me, I was concerned because she's had a lot of celebrity in the last couple of years, a lot of sponsorships, a lot of endorsements, and that can be very good for an athlete and their opportunities, or that can be a real distraction. And so as much as I was wishing her well, I was a bit concerned, how is this all going to work out? And it was really wonderful to see that the energy that she has put in really paid off in the pool, despite all of the consequences that we've had in the last year and a half.
Especially at such a young age, right? You mentioned all the sponsorship, celebrity, and all that comes with it, combined with the fact that she was a teenager or a young woman in her early 20s. She's not 21.
Mm-hmm.
So all that is a very, very difficult mix that I think she's made peace with, and it looks like it's working out pretty well, which gets us pretty excited because she'll still be around 3 years from now in Paris, and she's in a great spot.
So can you talk a little bit, Dave, about the maturity progression in swimming? Because I heard Byron mentioning that a lot in his commentating, and most of us who are not competitive swimmers, or I guess we think of athletes as being in their prime when they're younger and more fit. So how does that work in swimming?
Good question. This is something that's changed quite a bit in the last 15, 20 years with the ability for athletes to continue on professionally beyond when they swim as youngsters. So instead of having swimmers finish and peak out in high school and then maybe a little bit in university, with better understanding of nutrition, health science, mental training, better all-around dry land programming and swim programming, and making sure that they're getting themselves taken care of medically. The window for these swimmers to be able to continue to progress into their late 20s and even into their 30s has been extended, and that's great, especially because the money's going to come along with it. So some people can actually make a life out of it, which is really nice. So we'll get to see, hopefully, what some of these young men and women look like when they're 28, 29, 30. That's going to be pretty exciting.
Well, and it's interesting because I do certainly remember Brent Hayden, right? He's been around as long enough that I do remember him at the pool. And I was speaking with someone recently who's out of aquatics now, and she said, is he still swimming? How is he still making the times, right? Or when we had Ryan Cochran, I believe he did at least 3 Olympics, right? So it's incredible to see that time span, like to maintain a training regimen for 12 or 16 years is just beyond my comprehension.
I don't know Brent super well personally. We swam at a similar point in time. He's a little bit younger than I am, but certainly I've been around. What's amazing is he's swimming right now. He's come out of retirement for the right reasons. He wanted to give something to the sport. He needed to get something from the sport, and he handled it in a way that he was not ready to do and did not have the platform to do back in the late 2000s and early 2010s. He's really been a pretty significant moment where he's been able to mentor young men. He's prepared to mentor them and drive the program forward a little bit. He got those relays into finals. He had a good 50 freestyle in his individual events. I thought he really used social media in a very positive way, illustrating how proud he was and how he was the supporter-in-chief live and in person there in Tokyo. And my hat goes out to him because he did a really wonderful thing for the sport.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it takes that shift. I think a lot of people might remember Michael Phelps, right, in Beijing, 2008. He did pretty well. Then 2012 in London, it was kind of messy, and he was starting to have some personal issues in the media and getting sloppy, right? And then by 2016, he'd had a turnaround, and he ascribes that to his marriage, his kids, some other life force changes. But sometimes you lose the path, right? And it's not a linear continuum, right? We can't expect athletes to be perfect every day for 16 years, 12 years. Sometimes you do have to take a step back and then come back to it.
Well, we were just talking about Brent Hayden. Katie, did you watch any of the Olympic swimming coverage from the American feed from NBC?
No. I do know who was commenting, but I didn't watch it. Yeah.
Oh, so Michael Phelps was on there, and I think the initial skepticism that the best swimmer that there has ever been would go and collect a paycheck and just kind of say some platitudes and leave. That's not what he did. He was there providing really amazing insight. Just like we talked about Brent Hayden being a mentor, in a way, even though he wasn't on the team as a participant, being on the ground in Tokyo, my understanding is that Michael Phelps was in it with the swimmers, who obviously anybody who's swimming for Team USA grew up watching Michael Phelps, and he is a hero, I assume, to just about all of them, if not even more when you think about some of his teammates that really love him and care for him like family.
Yeah.
But he was able to get some really amazing insight from the athletes just because they'll tell him whatever he wants to know.
I'm not surprised at all. I do follow him on Instagram. He's pretty active on Instagram, and I noticed his stories, which are not usually super active, had a lot of behind the scenes in the athletes village, a lot of reshares of athletes and their accomplishments, a lot of kind of broadcasting setups. So I'll definitely go back on YouTube and watch some of Michael Phelps's commentary, because I do think the commentary, as you were saying, I myself also probably assumed that it was just going to be a paycheck, right? Because I know Robbie Gaines has done it for a while, and there may be other qualified, commentators that were bumped just to have Michael Phelps's name. But I'll definitely go back and watch if it's as valuable as you found it.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. It was refreshing. It was different.
Let's talk a little bit about, do you have any thoughts on Sarah Sjostrom? Because I know for me, listening to the commentary as a good intro to what I should expect from a race, it seemed like somebody who is very active in the sport, very strong advocate for swimming, very involved with the International Swim League, who swims professionally. She didn't have as great an Olympics as people were expecting her to have, maybe.
Katie, you know me, I have an opinion on just about everything, so when it comes to the sport. Sarah Sjostrom, for those who don't know who she is, which by looking at the names who are joining in here, most of them do know who she is. She's been the best female swimmer in the world for the last 13 years, from Sweden. She trains in Europe, in Turkey, with the Energy Standard team, and she is a very outwardly ambassador face for our sport. She is a multi-time medalist, gold medalist, world record holder, and earlier this year, in the winter, she broke her elbow, most notably, and that had a lot of people worried, okay, here's a woman who's supposed to win more medals and continue to be the dominant force that she is she going to be even able to swim in Tokyo? She did great. She did great for what she was. She came home with a silver medal in the 50 freestyle on the last day. She did not win a medal in the 100 fly, but she was competitive. Certainly put a good time on the board. She did obviously show some deficit in training, but for the most part, she took that time and kicked on a board in the pool, kept her kick nice and fit, kept in the gym, worked her lower body. She just did not have that holistic everything ready to go enough to be the best in the world, especially when the world was so strong this time around.
Let's talk about Japan and China. Japan, I don't think of as a swimming country, and there were definitely some, for me, surprise medals coming out of Japan. Did that fit for what you were expecting, or do you have any context to give us there?
I think maybe the Japanese are a little bit, maybe a slight bit disappointed with how they did in Tokyo. They are very much a swimming nation. They are a very highly technical, detailed-driven program. I know that probably doesn't surprise. Their best swimmer coming into the games was a gentleman by the name of Daya Sato. He's a world record holder in the 400 IM short course. And 400 IM, the first day, they're expecting him to win and, grab the games by the horns and say, hey, we're here. And he finished ninth in the prelims and did not swim the final. Byron McDonald.
The flag, right? That was the issue that Byron said. He carried the flag in opening ceremonies.
I don't know if he carried the flag. The primary issue that Byron pointed out, and this is really interesting to know, is he was training at elevation, at altitude, 3 days up to the meet. And that's just a little bit too close, actually a lot too close. And it's pretty sad that his camp did that because that's an unforced error. And he struggled in the 400 IM. He showed a flash in the 200 IM. He showed a flash in the butterfly, but he really didn't perform at the way that the whole world thought he could. which is too bad. And he should have had a chance to come out. Now, that said, the Japanese did, on the women's side, in the 200 and 400 IM, have a woman who came up and won by the name of Yui Ohashi. She's amazing. She's very technical. She's very quick. She's not huge. She's not particularly tall. She's just very efficient and technically proficient. And she was clearly the class of the the class of the IM field.
Yeah, I might be conflating athletes there. I do recall now what you're saying. They misjudged the taper and that he may not have been sufficiently rested. I do know another swimmer definitely carried the flag because that came up in other commentary. So if it was the same person, then that also would not have helped. You know, a 5-hour ceremony standing around with a flag would not have helped their performance either.
Yeah, there's a young Korean boy, I believe he's only 16, Sun Woo, and he carried the flag for Korea. The night before he swam the 400 free, and he was out very fast but wasn't able to hold on. That boy will have his time. His time will come. There was certainly the seeds planted that there are a bunch of very talented, especially on the men's side, young men that are going to be very exciting to watch from not necessarily major swimming powerhouses. There's also a very strong young 14-year-old Canadian woman that's going to be a name to watch 3 years from now. And 7 years from now, and 11 years from now, and that's Summer McIntosh. And she was 4th in the 400 free. She's going and trying to keep up with Katie Ledecky and Ariane Titmus from Australia, the best swimmers in the world. And she did just fine. In fact, she did wonderfully.
Well, and speaking about young swimmers, we can't forget Lydia Jacoby from Alaska. I mean, that was another one from a lay perspective that seemed to come out of nowhere. I mean, Alaska is not typically known for having great swimmers. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Not exactly a athletic power bed is Alaska. Now, this is, for anybody who's a pool operator watching this is a great situation, right? This is proof that champions come from everywhere. And yes, being part of privileged programs that have lots of money and lots of flash, it can certainly help. Sometimes just freak athletes are in your backyard or in your community and really just need community support, right? There's always a balance. She's not coming from a pool situation and a team situation where they're like, we just churn out Olympians or Division I swimming athletes one after another. This young lady who really most people haven't heard of. She was very fast. She, committed to going to the University of Texas. She's a very good swimmer. But she was an underdog to get on the American Olympic team in the first place. Then she spends 4 or 5 weeks training with Lily King and Annie Laser and some of the other really great breaststroke girls. And that was enough to take this freak athlete and turn her into the Olympic champion, unseating a heavily favored Lily King, also from the U.S., to win. And I'm sure the pool in Alaska had to make sure that they supported this freak talent. They certainly gave her enough to get her to where she needed to go, which is great. So I urge all pools to, talk with your swim teams, figure out who their outlier talents are. Do they have somebody who can be something special? And I think they went that extra level to help.
Well, and as you've said it, the community size is not necessarily an indicator of talent. So Okotoks, where I live, 35,000 people. I mean, we had Finley go to the Olympics, and it was his first Olympics, and relatively young guy, and not a lot of opportunity for competition in Alberta. But if you're talking about geography, I mean, Okotoks is not a secret hotspot for competitive swimmers, right? As you've been saying, it's just somebody who's talented, that has the right club scenario to be able to grow and develop, and they don't have the benefit of a high performance system or high performance feeding program to capitalize on that talent. They're just working with their local coach.
Yeah, they had a good cohort come through there. They had a few good swimmers, but Finley certainly the diamond amongst them. And he spent the last little bit at the High Performance Center in Toronto. The arrow's pointing up well for that young man for the next 3 years. I know he takes swimming exceptionally seriously, and it's basically a family business. So he wasn't quite ready for prime time in Tokyo, but 3 years from now, he's certainly one of the Canadian men to watch on the come up.
So let's talk about China. I only really follow competitive swimming when it's on mainstream TV.
Yep.
So 4 or 5 years ago, my perception was China was a powerhouse in the pool. There was Sun Yang, and then there was all these doping allegations. He was banned. What about the rest of the Chinese swimmers?
China's a very good swimming nation. They typically make a lot of noise going into an Olympics, and then maybe not as much noise at the Olympics. They had a young lady who was one of the best female swimmers at the meet, Zhang Yufei.
Mm-hmm.
She won the 200 fly. She won it by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
She was, I believe, she was bronze in the 100 butterfly. And probably the most impressive thing that came from China in this Olympics was their women's 4x200 freestyle relay. I don't know if you saw the race, Katie.
Did, yeah. Yes, we did.
The Australian women's team was massively favored to win. In fact, it was a joke. They might as well have just given them the medal before they even got on the blocks. And instead, China just said, "Hey, not so fast." And Zhang was the leader on that team, and they broke the world record. The Chinese women broke the world record. They won the gold medal. They beat the U.S. The U.S. beat the Australians. The Aussies were third. Unfortunately, the Canadians were fourth. But again, the meet isn't swam on paper. It's a swim in the pool.
Well, and I'm so glad you brought that event up because I wanted to chat about that one, especially. I know on social media, people were apologizing to Penny Alexiak for placing fourth, and she came out really confidently and said, "You guys, I did really, really well." And considering how many events that she was swimming in as well, I think it's really important to say, it's a team effort. It's not one athlete. And so I thought that was really great that she made light of the situation, that fourth is a really amazing finish. But talk about, didn't the Australians or the US, they also switched up the order and the athletes they were going to use because they were so confident about winning?
I mean, that's how relays are kind of swam at that level at this point in time. With there being the addition of the 4x1 mixed medley relay, there's just so many opportunities for these people who swim the hundreds and the 200s to swim that they can't do everything. So teams that tend to be a little higher towards the podium, they'll switch out maybe even all four swimmers for finals. And sometimes that works out very well. Australia qualified first, switched out, I believe, 3 of their 4 swimmers. Everybody thought, no problem, they're going to just be even faster. And that wasn't necessary. Well, they were faster, but not as fast as they needed to be. And then sometimes that works. And then sometimes it doesn't. If you watch the men's 4x100 freestyle, the British were thought to be pretty good. They left their 2 best swimmers, Duncan Scott and Tom Dean, off their morning relay, and they did not make the final. And then they had to settle for coming back a couple nights later, very motivated, and win the 4x200. But they should have been in the mix in the 4x1 as well.
Well, and that was one comment that I overheard that I really appreciated, which is, you don't want to save something in the tank, be well rested, and then not qualify, right? So it is really important to make that decision of, we want to qualify because for those who might not know, right, you start with several heats, and then you get to semifinals, and then you get to finals. You need to actually qualify to race for that medal. You can't just show up with a time from 6 months ago. You do actually have to participate to get to the finals.
100%. And there's a rich history of people who've been the favorites that have not been able to get there.
What is typically the thinking with a relay? I mean, obviously every coach has their own opinion, but when you've got a relay, you've got 4 swimmers going. I know the fastest leg, typically the final one, but how does it lay out with the first, second, and third swimmers? How are you stacking them? What is the thought process that goes into something like that?
There's a lot of moving parts in that question. It depends what level of competition you're at. If you're at the Olympics, that's the highest level of competition, obviously. But who do you have on your team? Where do you expect to finish? How fast do you think your 4 can be? It is very nice to put the fastest swimmer on the end. But if you're looking at a 4x100 relay team, and especially for the men, sometimes you want to put your fastest swimmers at the front so they can get out of the crowd and out of the front of the race for some clear water and avoid the turbulence of the field. that's the kind of the school I come from. Is I'd like to swim my relays with my swimmers on the freestyle, fastest to slowest, put a little pressure on the person who is the quote unquote slowest,
Mm-hmm.
and getting going. But if you are exceptionally confident, yeah, you can leave your best swimmer for the end and let them do their thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you mentioned already the pool, like the physical structure, the basin this time was very fast for a lot of swimmers. It was a 10-lane pool. So typically in competition, 8 lanes, slower swimmers seated on the outside, faster swimmers seated in lanes 4 and 5. But the benefit of a 10-lane pool in this situation is that you don't have those waves crashing right up against the walls that you would normally see with an 8-lane pool. Like there's a lot more flow outwards. That there were some great swims completed in 7, 8. It seemed this week.
All week. It's a Mirtha Pools is building these pools for the Olympics and is probably building your newer community pools as well. They're great. They do a great job. I've got a close friend who is one of the heads at Mirtha Canada. It's got Dan Thompson, a former world record holder, U of T icon. Obviously, Katie, you've probably met him in your travels.
Yeah.
They just make great pools, and I wish more communities would build new pools everywhere, Canada, U.S., wherever. Usually when new facilities are built and they're built properly, results kind of follow, and that's very exciting for the whole community.
So we've talked about Canadian swimmers, we've talked about Sarah Sjostrom, we talked about Hafnaoui, we've talked about some relays, China, Japan. What about, I believe he was Hungarian, really tall guy who barely broke a sweat, had like 2 body lengths ahead in his 2 races. Can you help me out here? Who was he?
I believe you're probably talking about Christoph Milak, the boy in the 200 butterfly. So inside tip here, Katie, I know a little bit about this. My associate head coach here at the Newmarket Stingray Swim Club, where I'm at, she is Hungarian, so she's able to watch these swim meets in Hungarian. She knows all the coaches. She tends to know the swimmers. And Christoph Milak is a young man. I believe he's 21 or 22, and he's still very much a young man. He does silly things. He showed up for a semifinal in the 200 butterfly, and he wasn't carrying his accreditation with him, and he wasn't allowed to go in the warm-up pool. So instead of getting his usual warm-up, he fought with the pool staff sillily and had to then compromise the length of his warm-up, showed up, still qualified first for the 200 butterfly final, but wasn't happy with the time. He went 1:51 in the final of the 200 butterfly. He was training to go 1:49.
Whoa.
And the rest of the world went about 1:53 or slower, and the best Canadian kid is going 1:56, 1:57. Mm-hmm. So this Christoph Milak boy is just getting started. Wow. Especially in that event. He was second in the 100 fly, right behind Caleb Dressel. Mm-hmm. He became the second. He became the next man under 50 seconds in the 100 butterfly. He scared the heck out of Caleb Dressel to break the world record just to win. Mm-hmm. So that'll be an interesting one too as Dressel gets a little bit older and Milak continues to just kind of age into his strength and hopefully his maturity. Mm-hmm. He's really talented and really special.
Well, he's the only one. I remember the close-ups on him. I mean, he was not even visibly breathing hard. It was just sort of like, cap off. Oh, yeah, okay.
He's just showing off for the camera, kid. He's just showing off for the camera.
Maybe, but then you watch some of these other swimmers, right? Maggie McNeil leaning against the camera post, right? Because she's gone flat out, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I mean, trust me, he was working.
Any other swimmers we've missed? Memories from this Tokyo Olympic swimming the last week? Anybody else that stuck out for you? Any events that were really memorable?
Just a couple. I won't keep you all day. I could do that. Obviously, on the women's side, Emma McKeon from Australia was the swimmer of the meet. She was the winner of the 100 free, medal of the 100 fly. She's just really talented. Star on all the relays. Comes from a swimming family. She's the best female swimmer in the world right now. I believe she's a little bit older. I believe she's 27. Excuse me if I'm wrong there. But this was certainly her moment to shine. She's had a father at the Olympics, a brother at the Olympics. So really this is just the family business. one place a lot of what we've talked about before is we expect the Americans to win. In many cases, when we watch them race, there was one situation where the Americans weren't expected to win, and that was in the men's distance swims, 800 and 1500 freestyle. And then this young man from Florida by the name of Bobby Finke showed up and did the same thing in both races. He just lurked with the best swimmers in the race. And then in the 800 free, in the middle of the meet, he basically accelerated by 4 seconds on the final 50 to steal gold from everybody and shock the world. And then on the last day in the 1500, he kind of did the same thing, but it wasn't as shocking, but he was even faster on his last 50 in his 1500 than he was in his 800. And he basically rope-a-doped everyone into swimming his race, and he was able to claim the gold medal doing that. I want to make sure that I get this all right. No, those were the big ones. Probably the big winner financially from these games will be the young lady from Hong Kong who finished second in the 200 free and second in the 100 free. Her name is Siobhan Hai. She swam at the University of Michigan. Hong Kong had some big cash prizes available for medals, so she's going to do just fine financially coming out of these games.
Well, and you were mentioning Emma McKeon, right? I believe a sibling was on the relay team, right? There was 2 of them there, and then obviously
not related. Not related. No. It's just that all Australian swimmers, the last name is McKeon or McCune or Campbell. That's it. It's just a thing there.
Well, and I was going to say we can't neglect to mention the Australian coach with the platinum hair and the short shorts and his victory dance. If you haven't seen it, look him up on YouTube. What's his name, Dave?
His name is Dean Boxall, Boxall, and he is a delightful maniac. He's coaching one of the best swimmers in the world, Ariane Titmus, who won the 200 and 400 freestyle for Australia. This man knows how to party, even if it's all by himself. So, you know what? This is a guy, I'm roughly the same age as him. He's a couple years older than me. He's worked his entire life to achieve the top of his sport. Good on him. Good for him. All right? Party like no one's watching. Love it. Can't get enough of it. Not my style, but love that it's his.
Well, and I think to your point exactly, like this is the culmination of so much blood, sweat, and tears for so many coaches and athletes. It's important to celebrate. I think, though, we're going to see many memes for a long time with him in them.
I love it. Okay, bring him on. I'm ready for it. Right.
All right. Any final thoughts, Dave? We've been chatting about the 2020 Olympics swimming. It exceeded, I think, every Canadian's hopes and expectations. It was super exciting, I know, for me to watch. How was it for you?
Exhausting, but exciting. I can't wait for 3 years from now. There's just a lot to be excited about. Yeah, we don't have the Ryan Lochte's and the Michael Phelps is winning so many medals now like we have in the past, but that just means the rest of the world is so close and is so exciting. It actually becomes a sport that is watchable, even if you're not cheering for the American. And there's nothing wrong with cheering for the American, but it makes it more inclusive and just really, really great to watch. My last thing is if you're still watching this, you must love swimming. So, Katie, I've got a new podcast. I host it with my friend Zoe Miles. It's called The Blue Dino Project. It's on Spotify. It's eventually going to be on Apple Podcasts. But Apple Podcasts is a diva. It's horrible to work with. But Spotify, love them. Tune in, listen, and all we do is talk about nerdy swimming stuff all the time. So we're there for you.
Okay, so competitive swimming, athletes, coaching, that jazz?
Yeah, a lot from a Canadian perspective with a little bit of mirth.
Always, well, it's got to be enjoyable, right? Nothing you do isn't enjoyable.
If you've ever talked to me before, which you have a number of times, yes, I love the sport. I take it very seriously, but I also realize that there is a very, very light end to the sport that should be celebrated as well.
Well, and I think, as you just said, I think that's why I know I enjoyed watching the sport so much this time around. Love Michael Phelps, love that he can clean up some medals, but if it's a foregone conclusion, people don't necessarily want to watch. And there were a lot of upsets, a lot of different factors at play that maybe in a perfect training cycle without COVID, it would have been more sewn up with certain countries and certain teams. But with so many different variables this time around, I found it really, really exciting to watch. And I would encourage people to watch replays or, individual events if they didn't get the time to watch it live.
Agreed. Agreed. You can, if you're in Canada, you can watch most of it back on Amazon Prime. And I assume that if Amazon Prime made that deal with the CBC in Canada, they probably made it with just about every country and their provider as well, with the exception of NBC. So you got to catch it on Peacock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was really great. Anybody with Amazon Prime, it's really easy. You go into your homepage and you go and find the Olympic channel, and they've got it nicely separated out by sport. And then there's a description so you can replay specific events or specific medals that you're looking for. I found it so seamless that it really also did cause me to watch more than I might have juggling browsers and streaming to TV and all that.
Yeah, it caused my 2-year-old daughter to watch more than she wanted to. It's okay.
All right. Always a pleasure. Coach Dave Ling, Newmarket Stingray Swim Club. We will catch up with you again sometime soon.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Dave. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.